So I just wanted to talk a little bit about. I've seen a couple of Reddit stories on people, especially guys, who shame their girlfriends for writing fan fiction. They're like, "Oh, it's not real writing. You should just write something original." And in a lot of them, the girlfriend's always like, "I'm just practicing. Like, I'm just learning how to write and everything. Can you I'm working on an original thing, but I like writing fan fiction. That's fun for me." And the boyfriends are just awful, completely dismiss them, and I can't stand it. Like, I genuinely can't stand it. And so, sorry, I'm playing Dragon Age and my laptop started lagging, but um, yeah, I do write fan fiction. I haven't written any in a week or something like that because I got my laptop back and everything's on my tablet, and I have to do like a bit of a switch with what I'm working on. But I've written two works that are the length of two books. They're in two different fandoms. One of those fandoms I recently left, and I have no intentions of ever returning to. I just started working on a sequel to that book, and people who love the first one were like, "Oh my god, you're back!" And now I have to be like, "Look, I've decided to leave the fandom," and blah blah blah. It was a whole mess. The other one, I wrote it for a Big Bang, which is like a group where you write a story and someone does artwork for it. Mind you, I got dropped 4 times. I never had an artist in the end, and in the end, my friend came out of nowhere and was like, "Hey, I made this for you," and I was like, I cried so much. And then a couple of years later, I got another message from them saying, "Hey, I made the official cover for this story that you wrote like 2 years ago." So that was really cool to see, and I got a physical copy made of the second story just for me, one physical copy. And I took that with me when I went to rehab, and in rehab I was like, "Hey, I have written 2 books," and the majority of people in rehab are much, much older than me, like, you know, 10, 20, 30 years older than me. There was a group of guys sort of in the same age area as me, and one girl. Two of those guys and the one girl didn't know what fan fiction was. I genuinely didn't actually get along with one of the guys because he was an Eshe and I was a nerd, and unfortunately we were the Eshe nerds that we didn't become friends. It was bad. But the one other guy, he knew what fan fiction was. He was a D&D guy. His girlfriend was super into that sort of thing. So he and I 100% knew that if we'd met outside of rehab, we would have run in the same circles and been really good friends. And so I was like, "Hey, I've written 2 books. They're on fan fiction." And older people would be like, "Oh, what? It's really cool that you've written 2 books, but what's fan fiction?" I would explain it to them. I was scared to explain what fan fiction was and that these weren't original characters or anything like that, but they thought it was awesome. They said, "That's amazing that you've written 2 books and that you put so much time and effort into it." And especially, the second one that you wrote, you were like working 12-hour shifts and writing in your breaks and everything. And I was like, "Yeah, I had a deadline. Like, I had no choice." And they they could have said so much stuff, especially because they were all older people, and they could have that didn't know what this was originally until I explained it, and then they were like, "Oh, that's fine. Like, we don't care." It's the fact that you put this much time and effort into something while you were struggling with addiction, and these works don't revolve around addiction, is incredible. And I was like, "Well, yeah, that's not the goal of these books. That's not what I wanted to write about." And yeah, they have other characters who imbibe in drugs and alcohol, but the main characters themselves. The first one kind of, he gets into it a little towards the end, but the second one he didn't. He had no interest in it. He said he says he drank once in his entire life and he hated it and never drank again. So it's wild to me that people don't consider fan fiction real writing, because it is. Fan fiction's been around for way longer than we think it has been. I can't remember. I actually did research on how old fan fiction is, and it's way older than people think it is. Like, people think it started around um, when Kirk and Spock were really popular back in like the 60s and 70s or something like that. And it's like, well, yeah, that was definitely a huge boom, and it was a big point in fandom history, but it was not the start of fan fiction. It was probably the start of modern day fan fiction as we know it. Like, these ladies who were watching it would all like pass it around and everything, and like queer people who were in the closet and all that kind of stuff. Like, you know, they would pass it around to each other and that sort of thing. And I am pretty convinced, especially because he's dropped a lot of hints about it but never actually outright said it, that my dad wrote Star Wars fanfiction in the early 2000s. I can never get him to confirm it. He's always wanted to be a writer and he's never gone into it. But I'm pretty sure he's written fanfiction, and I'm kind of bummed that my dad will never go into writing. I hope he does one day. He's very smart, and he's apparently had this idea for even before I was born. Like, he would tell my mum about it, and they're not married anymore, but you know. Yeah, and when people say fanfiction isn't real writing, I'm like, you do realise some of the most popular series in the world are originated from fanfiction, like 50 Shades of Grey, even though very problematic content, still started as a Twilight fanfiction, and very out of character when someone told me that it was, and I was like, really? Christian Grey is meant to be Edward Cullen? This is the same man? After was a Harry Styles fanfiction, much weirder because that is a real person, like that's a real guy. I don't know how Harry Styles feels about that. I don't know how Stephanie Meyer feels about 50 Shades, but you know, the fact is these authors recognised that these works were really popular online, and they went out and they changed it to original works, and it, you know, and there was a lot different in the works that they really could just change the names and they could make it original. Like, I've seen people who have had to go and change pretty much every aspect of stories because they come up with fantastic ideas, but too much of it is rooted in the original universe of where they wrote this story. Like, I'm working on one that was in that, you know, I've written so much of it that's quite different from the original works, and I'm like, you know, and I really rang my friend and I said, hey, I've got this idea, I think I can change it and make it original. I've just got to change like a lot of the mechanics and stuff with like the lore and everything, and it could definitely go into being original work. And he was like, that sounds amazing, do that. And I haven't finished the first draft yet, but I'm gonna send it to him and be like, I think this is, you can't tell, can you? I don't think you can. Like, I've reread it a couple of times and I'm like, I can't tell. But you know, I know the origins of it. I know where it originally came from. My brother also knows. He's the only person who knows, apart from my friend. Fanfiction is 100% real writing, and there is literally like thousands, like millions of works out there that are fanfiction. This one here is bothering me. There it is. There's literally millions of works out there that are really, really popular, and they're really big fan. They're all fan fiction. Like, there are a lot of people who don't even read books anymore. Like, you know, I'm reading, in terms of published books, I'm reading Sunrise on the Reaping. Fantastic so far. I haven't got very far into it, but you know. And the other is Daydream by Hannah Grace. I know, very vastly different books. But, you know, I'm a complicated woman. And I'm loving these. I love them both. I'm nearly finished with Daydream actually, and I love it in part because my friend, I was reading out passages to my friend, but I mixed them up and he completely misread the situation and turned around and he went, wait a minute, they did this before that? That makes no sense. And I started laughing because I didn't realise he was actually fully paying attention. And I was like, no, they did this before this. I just read this part out first. And he was like, oh, okay. I just thought they were different kinds of people. And it was very funny. We laughed a lot. But yeah, like, at one point I was reading pretty much exclusively fan fiction, and the physical copy of my book, I lent it to two of my friends in rehab. One of them was just a lady who loved reading. That was it. She wanted to read it, she read it, she loved it. The other one was my friend who loved the show that the book was based on. Our first conversation was him asking about one of the characters in said show. And he read the whole thing and he loved it. He would come up to me like every other morning and be like, so I read more of your book, I have some notes, and it was always positive. Like, he was like, you're an incredible writer, this is such an incredible universe, like, this is an incredible story, like, you've gone and took these characters and put them into basically canon rewritten, and that's what it's called online, it's a canon rewrite. And I have no intentions of ever changing this book and publishing it because I'm very proud of where it is and the universe that it's in. I'm like, I'm gonna leave it here, like, you know. and even when I publish my works and everything, I'm not going to reveal my online persona because I don't want people finding my works online. And if people are able to sort of like make a connection with how I write and everything, but I've been told that like there's like a thing online where you can upload your writing to, and it tells you what authors you write like, and I apparently write like the guy who wrote Gone with the Wind crossed over with Stephanie Meyer, and I was like, that makes sense. I've read a lot of Twilight in high school. I read a lot of Virginia Andrews as well, and she's a very heavy influence in my writing. I'm trying to think anyone else. No, it was mainly Stephanie Meyer and Virginia Andrews, and a couple of people on Wattpad. There was one who was very funny. She wrote original works, because back in the day, Wattpad was a lot of original works, and I didn't really get into any of the fan fiction on there back then. But yeah, sort of in conclusion, I guess, fan fiction is 100% real writing. You can't publish it though. You can't publish fan fiction, like it's not legal to do so. There are some creators and authors out there who ask that people not write stuff on their fan fictions. I think Anne Rice is one of them. I'm not sure how far that goes, considering Riverdale is meant to be the Archie comics. Am I thinking of the right author? I'm probably not. But correct me if I'm wrong. I will probably go and quickly correct that. But and then you got real person fan fiction, and there's a lot of that out there, especially for bands and YouTubers. They're very, very popular. Like my friends used to send me MCR fan fiction in high school, and I was not an MCR fan. I like a couple of their songs, but I'm not actually an avid fan or anything like that. I don't remember all of their names. I like them. I think they're pretty cool, but I'm ultimately not that interested in them. I read mainly Narnia fanfiction in high school, I'm not gonna lie. And, you know, there are YouTubers who... I've seen some who are completely fine with it. I've seen some who have gone from being completely fine with it to saying no more, which Game Grumps is a good example of that. They were fine with it about 10 years ago. Probably a bit less than that. But now they're like, look, we don't want this done anymore. And the fans were like, cool, see ya. In that they wouldn't write fan fiction anymore, but I haven't written Game Grumps fan fiction. And you know, there are people who are outright like, please don't write fan fiction about me, don't add me in it, and people are like, that's cool, we respect that. Like there was a guy that used to be on Game Grumps who was one of the people who was in their episodes, and he'd say, please don't write fan fiction about me, I've got younger sisters who use the internet, so please don't. And everyone was like, that's fine with us, brother, we're not going to do that. So yeah, fan fiction is very much real writing, and anyone who says that it isn't doesn't know what writing is or what fan fiction actually is. They just think it's cringe self-inserts, which majority of the time it isn't. That's why I end fan fiction. That's a whole other kettle of fish.